Before you record any audio onto a track, it's critical to set a proper amount of input level, and every interface does that a little bit differently. But I've got my bass guitar plugged into the first input of my audio interface, and I'm going to check the level by coming to the mix console, and I'm going to look at the mono input. The stereo input is here, and we'll still be able to see that, but we'll only be able to see input coming from the left side because that is the same as input number 1 on a mono input. And you can tell that these are input channels because they are red. Input and output channels are indicated by that red fader knob. Then I'm going to play some loud notes on my bass guitar, and I'm going to see how much input level I'm getting. And I'm looking at that level, and that seems really quiet to me. It's all the way down at minus 24 dB. And so what I'm going to do is adjust the gain of my audio interface. And like I said, everybody's audio interface does things a little bit differently. So to set the audio input level, you'll need to find the input into which you have plugged the instrument or the microphone. Let's say in this particular case, I've got my bass guitar plugged into input number 1. And then on the audio interface, in this case, this particular audio interface, I'm going to locate the gain knob on the front of the interface. And I'm going to turn that up until I see the peak indicator come on the loudest notes that I play. Then I'm going to back off the input gain knob until I no longer see the peak indicator during my loudest passages that I'm going to be recording. And that helps you set a proper input level with an appropriate amount of signal, but also maximizing your signal to noise ratio. You can roll that input gain back quite a bit and still get a good level for recording. It's just critical that you never see that peak indicator during the recording, because that will indicate that you have clipped the input of your audio interface, thereby making the track that you're recording distort and have the clipping audible in it during playback. So you definitely don't want to do that. So I would recommend backing that input gain off a little bit more even than you think you might have to, because you'll eventually get somebody in front of a microphone that will start to emote, and they might even get closer to the microphone and they could clip the input of the audio interface during their recording, and you just don't want to do that. So set a high enough level that you get a good signal to noise, but not high enough that you see the peak indicator. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn up the input gain on my interface here. And so I'm going to set it at about 10 o'clock. Let's see how much that increases the level into the track. And then I'm going to play really loud. And I think I can get even a little more up there, maybe right around the 12 o'clock position. Let me try that. There, that's an appropriate amount of input level. But if I were to set that input gain on my interface too high, watch what happens in the mix console. Not only does it sound distorted and terrible, but it also lights up the clip indicators on the inputs. You can clear those clip indicators out just by clicking on them, but then you'd want to roll your input level down on that gain knob on your audio interface, or however you adjust the gain on your interface. They're always a little bit different. Let's just try it again. There, now I've got a good input level. I'm not clipping it during the loudest passage, so I can proceed with the recording, but I also need to think about monitoring. I'll cover that next.